Admiral Vraxis stood motionless on the observation deck of the Omniscia, hands clasped firmly behind his back, eyes fixed on the holographic projection of an unremarkable blue planet rotating slowly before him. The soft azure glow illuminated his metallic exoskeleton, casting elongated shadows across the polished obsidian floor. For 3,000 years, the Zeralian Empire had expanded across the cosmos, conquering over 5,000 worlds without meeting significant resistance. Their technological superiority, combined with flawless military doctrine, had proven unstoppable against all encountered species. Status report. Vraxis commanded, his voice resonating through the cavernous chamber. Lieutenant Tyrrell approached with practiced precision, her movements synchronized to the millisecond with Zeralian military protocol. Conquest Fleet 47 is in optimal formation, Admiral. All 423 warships report combat readiness at 99.8%. The remaining 0.2% variance is within acceptable parameters due to minor radiation interference from the local star. Vraxis nodded his crystalline eyes, analyzing the data streams flowing across his neural interface. The High Command had designated this solar system as a Priority 3 acquisition target, worth conquering, but not strategically vital. Still, orders were orders, and the Empire demanded absolute compliance. Preliminary scans of the third planet, Tyrrell continued, indicate developing technological civilization, primitive fusion energy, limited space travel confined to their planetary system, rudimentary artificial intelligence. Evaluation matrix suggests Pattern 7B conquest protocol would be most efficient. Vraxis examined the readouts himself. The inhabitants called their world Earth and themselves humans. Their global communication network was surprisingly robust, if chaotically organized. Their military capabilities were fragmented, divided into nation-states, rather than unified under planetary command. A standard conquest scenario, repeated thousands of times across the galaxy. Deploy the Herald, Vraxis ordered. Standard first contact protocols. On his command, a sleek obsidian vessel detached from the Omniscia. The Herald, a specialized first contact craft engineered to establish dominance through visual intimidation, accelerated toward Earth's atmosphere. Its hull, designed to absorb and redirect light, appeared as a tear in reality itself. Vraxis allowed himself a rare moment of contemplation. The High Command had recently prioritized the subjugation of species demonstrating advanced cognitive complexity, even if their technology remained primitive. Intelligence evaluation metrics for this species suggested higher than average adaptability, but nothing extraordinary. Just another conquest for the glory of Zerali. How terribly mistaken he was. The first indication that something was wrong came 47 minutes later. The Herald's telemetry abruptly ceased. One moment the craft had been descending toward a moderately sized human settlement, and the next, nothing. Explain, Vraxis demanded, his voice remaining even, despite the unprecedented situation. Tyrrell's exoskeleton shifted uncomfortably, the first break in protocol Vraxis had witnessed from her in 17 years of service. Unknown Admiral. Last transmission indicated successful atmospheric entry. No distress signal. No debris detection. The Herald has simply vanished. Impossible. Vraxis activated the neural command interface. Deploy reconnaissance drones. Full spectrum analysis. I want answers within the hour. The drones, microscopic machines capable of transmitting visuals from anywhere on the planet, descended through the atmosphere in a dispersed pattern. Their findings disrupted 3 millennia of Zeralian military certainty. The Herald had indeed reached its destination, a settlement the humans called Phoenix, in a region designated Arizona. But upon arrival, it had been swarmed by thousands of small, crudely constructed flying machines. Human civilians, not military personnel, operated these devices, which carried nothing more sophisticated than optical recording equipment. But the sheer number of them had overwhelmed the Herald's navigation systems, causing it to execute an emergency landing procedure. And then, most shockingly, humans had approached the craft on foot. without protective gear, without weapons. Some carried only containers of liquid refreshment. One human had placed a decorated hat, what the planetary network identified as a sombrero, atop the Herald's sensor array. This, Vraxis said slowly, is unprecedented. Tyrrell reviewed the surveillance footage repeatedly. They appear to be celebrating the arrival admiral, but their behavior follows no first contact protocol in our database. Vraxis narrowed his eyes. Deploy the Vanguard, full tactical array. This requires direct intervention. Within the hour, 5 Zeralian battlecruisers entered Earth's atmosphere, positioning themselves above major population centers. Standard intimidation procedure called for hovering above structures of cultural significance, demonstrating firepower by vaporizing uninhabited areas and broadcasting surrender demands across all communication frequencies. The human response defied all predictive models. In the settlement, designated Tokyo, residents gathered on rooftops and aimed portable illumination devices, flashlights, at the battlecruiser. The concentrated light, though harmless, confused the vessel's optical targeting systems, which had been calibrated for military-grade laser weapons, not thousands of uncoordinated civilian light sources. In New York, humans pointed communication devices, smartphones, at the ships, broadcasting the intimidation display to others around the planet who responded not with terror, but with creations they called memes that circulated globally within minutes. Most disturbing of all, in Rio de Janeiro, humans continued a pre-scheduled celebration called Carnival, seemingly incorporating the Zeralian ships into their festivities. Music played, humans danced. The planetary conquest threat appeared to be interpreted as some form of entertainment. Admiral Tyrrell reported, "The humans are not following expected fear response patterns." Vraxis paced the command deck, reviewing centuries of conquest protocols in seconds. Implement Directive 34. Target their military installations. Show them our true capabilities. The Zeralian fleet recalibrated, focusing on Earth's defense facilities. Precision energy weapons powered up, targeting missile silos, military bases, and naval vessels. This would surely demonstrate the futility of resistance. But before the first shot could be fired, something extraordinary happened. The humans launched a counterattack using civilian technologies. In Silicon Valley, information specialists, hackers, penetrated communication frequencies, transmitting data packets that triggered the battlecruiser's collision avoidance systems. The ships, suddenly receiving thousands of false proximity alerts, automatically adjusted their positions in erratic patterns. At a research facility in Massachusetts, humans deployed what they called forensic warriors, medical personnel equipped with thermal imaging devices, typically used for body location. These humans identified the cooling vents on Zeralian ships and targeted them with ordinary construction equipment, blowing heated air into the thermal regulation systems and triggering emergency overrides. And in orbit, the humans activated a network of satellites, not weapons platforms, but communications devices, repurposed to emit focused radio waves that interfered with Zeralian targeting systems. "This is impossible," Tyrrell whispered, forgetting protocol entirely. "They're using consumer technology against military-grade systems designed to withstand weapons from 300 civilizations." Vraxis stared at the battle telemetry with growing disbelief. "Recall the Vanguard. We need to reassess." As the battlecruisers retreated to orbit, Vraxis convened his command staff. For the first time in recorded Zeralian history, a conquest had been repelled without the deployment of equivalent technology. "Analysis," he demanded. The tactical officer, Commander Zenith, displayed visual data from the engagements. The humans appear to operate without centralized military response protocols. Each regional group improvised defensive measures using available technology. There is no discernible pattern to their resistance. "That's not possible," Vraxis countered. "All species operate according to logical defense parameters." "All species we have previously encountered," corrected Tyrrell, her voice uncharacteristically tentative. "These humans, they don't behave according to our predictive matrices." Vraxis contemplated this disturbing assessment. In 3,000 years of conquest, the Zeralian Empire had catalogued responses from species across the cognitive spectrum. Some fought with advanced technology. Others surrendered immediately. Some attempted diplomatic negotiations, but all followed predictable logical patterns. These humans did not. New approach, Vraxis decided. Deploy the thermal vanguard to their equatorial regions. The desert terrains will neutralize their ability to use water-based countermeasures, and the isolation will prevent mass coordination. The thermal vanguard, specialized troops equipped with heat-based weaponry and adaptive exoskeletons, descended on Earth's desert regions. Their mission was to establish forward operating bases from which to launch the renewed conquest effort. The humans once again responded in ways that defied conventional military logic. In the Sahara Desert, humans mounted ancient animal-based transportation, camels, approaching the Zeralian positions, not in attack formation, but in scattered, unpredictable patterns. They carried no visible weapons, only containers of water, which they periodically consumed themselves or offered to others. The thermal vanguard's targeting systems designed to identify and neutralize armed combatants struggled to classify these individuals as threats. In the outback, humans utilized modified civilian vehicles, driving in circular patterns around Zeralian positions, creating dust clouds that obscured optical sensors, while blasting audio recordings of something called AC/DC at volumes that interfered with Zeralian sonic communication frequencies. Most bizarrely, in Death Valley, humans appeared wearing minimal clothing, applying oils to their skin, and deliberately exposing themselves to the sunlight in a practice they called sunbathing. These humans carried recreational equipment, beach umbrellas, coolers, and inflatable floating devices despite the absence of water. This behavior so completely contradicted survival protocols in extreme heat environments that the Zeralian optical cavalry relying on pattern recognition to identify targets experienced system-wide confusion. "They're having a..." Tyrrell struggled with the translation, "a beach party in the middle of combat operations, Admiral." Vraxis stared at the surveillance footage, watching humans laugh, consume beverages, and behave as though the most advanced conquest force in galactic history were merely an unusual backdrop to their leisure activities. "Retreat!" he ordered, the word tasting foreign in his mouth. Full tactical withdrawal of the thermal vanguard. As the troops returned to their ships, reports flooded in from other engagement zones. In Arctic regions, humans had neutralized Zeralian cold-adapted forces by creating elaborate ice sculptures that mimicked Zeralian physiology, confusing identification systems. In oceanic theaters, civilian diving enthusiasts had deployed something called pool noodles to disrupt sonar capabilities. Vraxis called an emergency council with his senior officers, an action without precedent in his 4-century military career. "We are facing an adversary that operates outside the constraints of logical warfare," he stated, displaying the battlefield data. "Our systems are calibrated to counter technological and tactical responses within predictable parameters. The humans employ chaos as strategy." Commander Zenith reviewed the engagement statistics. "They have suffered casualties, Admiral. Their defensive measures are not wholly effective. We could simply increase force deployment and overwhelm them through numerical superiority." But Lieutenant Tyrrell shook her head. "Analysis of their communication networks indicates they are already adapting. They are sharing successful countermeasures globally. Each defeat seems to inspire new, more unpredictable responses." Vraxis considered this assessment. The Empire had encountered species with superior technology, superior numbers, even superior tactical doctrine, but never a species that embraced unpredictability as a core defensive strategy. "We will engage their primary defense facilities directly," he decided. "Orbital bombardment of military installations only. Minimal collateral impact. Force them to respond with conventional warfare." The order was given. 50 Zeralian warships positioned themselves in precisely calculated orbits, targeting Earth's most significant military installations. Energy weapons powered up preparations made with a mathematical perfection that had conquered thousands of worlds. But before the first shot could be fired, the humans launched their most incomprehensible countermeasure yet. They held a parade. Not in one location, but simultaneously, in cities worldwide. Millions of humans gathered in densely packed formations, carrying colorful displays, playing musical instruments, and marching in patterns that matched no known military formation. They called it the Welcome to Earth Cosmic Carnival. The energy signatures of these massive human gatherings overloaded Zaralian targeting systems, which were calibrated to distinguish between civilian and military targets. The civilian gatherings deliberately positioned themselves in proximity to military installations, creating targeting confusion that Zaralian ethical protocols could not resolve. And in orbit, something even more extraordinary occurred. Earth's primitive space agencies launched what appeared to be thousands of small metallic objects. Not weapons. These were objects humans called disco balls, reflective spheres traditionally used for entertainment. The sudden presence of these reflective surfaces created optical interference across all targeting frequencies. "They've weaponized a dance party," Taral reported, her voice reflecting the complete breakdown of Zaralian tactical understanding. Vraxis watched as the carefully orchestrated orbital bombardment dissolved into confusion. Targeting systems could not distinguish legitimate military objectives from civilian celebrations. Predictive algorithms failed to calculate response patterns for an enemy that fought with reflective spheres and musical processions. "Cease operation," he ordered, his voice unnaturally quiet. "Return all vessels to standby positions." For the first time in his military career, possibly for the first time in Zaralian military history, Admiral Vraxis felt something alien to his species' doubt. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity's disorganized but remarkably effective defense continued to evolve. In a university laboratory in Boston, Dr. Mara Lee worked feverishly with her team of graduate students and engineers. An acoustics specialist with no military background, she had been recruited through an emergency civilian defense initiative. "The problem isn't that we can't damage their ships," she explained, examining resonance patterns on her workstation. "The problem is their predictive systems. They expect logical military responses. So we give them something else entirely." Her creation was elegant in its simplicity, the scream amplifier, a device that collected and magnified human vocalizations at frequencies specifically calibrated to interfere with Zaralian communication systems. Not a weapon in any conventional sense, but a tool that transformed human emotional expression into a defensive technology. "Testing phase complete," announced her assistant Thomas. "We've achieved 94% disruption across all Zaralian communication bandwidths." Dr. Lee smiled grimly. "Deploy to all resistance centers, and tell them to get people who really know how to make noise. Sports fans, metal bands, drill sergeants, Italian grandmothers, anyone who can project." Across the planet, similar innovations emerged from unlikely sources. Night Detective Jackson, an astronomer who specialized in low-light observation, discovered that ordinary laser pointers, when coordinated by thousands of volunteers, could temporarily blind Zaralian landing craft sensors. Amateur drone racers developed interception patterns that confused Zaralian navigation systems. Culinary specialists found that certain cooking oils, when aerosolized, adhered to Zaralian optical sensors with surprising effectiveness. None of these countermeasures would have succeeded against the Zaralian armada individually, but deployed simultaneously without central coordination through grassroots organization via social media and improvised communication networks, they created a defense that Zaralian military doctrine simply could not parse. Aboard the Omniscia, Admiral Vraxis faced the greatest challenge of his extended lifetime. The holographic displays showed not a conquered world, but a planet in chaotic resistance. 3 initial invasion waves had been repelled, not by superior technology or military might, but by improvisational tactics that no simulation could have predicted. "The Strategic Command Fleet has arrived," Admiral Taral reported. 500 capital ships, 20,000 drop vessels. High Command has authorized Pattern 1A conquest protocols. Pattern 1A. The maximum force authorization previously deployed only twice in Zarelian history against civilizations that had possessed technology rivaling their own. Against humans, it seemed excessive to the point of absurdity. And yet 3 attempted invasions had failed. Deploy the strategic fleet, Vraxis ordered. Full spectrum engagement. Target their centers of power simultaneously. Across Earth's skies, the Zarelian armada appeared, a constellation of artificial stars that blotted out the sun in some regions. Dropships descended by the thousands, targeting government facilities, communication centers, power generation plants. This was no longer a measured conquest. It was an overwhelming demonstration of force, designed to shatter resistance in a single coordinated strike. The humans responded with operational logic. In Washington, D.C., as Zarelian dropships descended toward the White House, they were met not by military aircraft, but by thousands of civilian drones, decorated with flashing lights and trailing colorful streamers. These drones, individually harmless, swarmed in patterns, choreographed by competitive video game players, creating an aerial ballet of such complexity that Zarelian navigation systems initiated emergency protocols, interpreting the chaotic movements as evidence of defensive capabilities beyond their threat assessment. In Beijing, as capital ships positioned themselves above government buildings, street performers coordinated a massive display of mirror dancing, reflecting concentrated sunlight, towards Zarelian optical sensors in patterns derived from ancient Tai Chi movements. The harmonized light patterns, beautiful by human standards, registered as weapons targeting systems to Zarelian defenses, triggering countermeasures against non-existent attacks. In Moscow's Red Square, a hastily assembled orchestra of 10,000 musicians played at maximum volume, their sound amplified by Dr. Li's technology. The music, Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture complete with cannons, created sonic interference that disrupted Zarelian command frequencies. And perhaps most effectively, on every digital platform across the planet, humans deployed what they called memes, cultural information packages combining humor, cultural references, and psychological insights, targeting Zarelian behavior patterns. These digital constructs spread through Zarelian information gathering systems, introducing logical paradoxes and cognitive dissonance into their analytical frameworks. The Strategic Command Fleet, the most powerful military force in known space, found itself responding to thousands of simultaneous, uncoordinated, and entirely unpredictable civilian countermeasures. Their strategic doctrine, refined over millennia of conquest, had no protocols for addressing an enemy that deployed dance choreography as a defensive measure or transformed orchestral music into a weapon. On the Omnisia's command deck, Admiral Vraxis watched as the most powerful invasion force ever assembled was thrown into disarray by tactics that defied categorization. Status report. He demanded, his voice no longer entirely steady. Tiral's response came slowly, as though she struggled to process the information herself. 47% of dropships have aborted landing procedures due to navigation interference. 32% report critical system errors following exposure to what appears to be human entertainment content. The remainder are operational, but reporting targeting difficulties caused by... Admiral, I don't know how to classify this. The humans appear to be using recreational transportation devices, skateboards, snowboards, and roller skates, to approach our ground forces. The tactical display confirmed this incredible report. In multiple engagement zones, humans on wheeled recreational equipment were maneuvering between Zarelian infantry units with agility that confounded targeting systems calibrated for conventional military movement patterns. Most disturbing of all, the humans appeared to be enjoying themselves. "This isn't warfare," Vraxis said quietly. "At least not warfare as we understand it." Commander Zenith, watching the tactical displays with increasing alarm, turned to his superior. "Admiral, I believe we must consider a strategic withdrawal. Our forces are not equipped to counter whatever this is." For a moment, the command deck fell silent. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Zeralian Empire had never retreated from a conquest. The very concept was alien to their military doctrine. "Open a communication channel," Vraxis finally ordered. "I will address their leaders directly." The communication systems aboard the Omnicia interfaced with Earth's primitive networks, establishing connection with what appeared to be a hastily assembled coalition of human authorities. Their responses came not from a unified command, but from dozens of different governmental, scientific, and even civilian representatives, speaking over each other, disagreeing openly, and occasionally making what translation systems identified as jokes during this most serious of discussions. "This is Admiral Vraxis of the Zeralian Strategic Command Fleet." He began his image transmitted to screens worldwide. "I propose an immediate cessation of hostilities and the establishment of diplomatic communications." The human response was as chaotic as everything else about them. Some representatives immediately agreed. Others demanded concessions. Several made statements translation systems classified as sarcastic. One human in a floral shirt asked if the Zeralians would be interested in tourism opportunities. "We have never encountered a species that fights as yours does." Vraxis continued struggling to maintain the formal diplomatic protocols. "Your defensive strategies defy our understanding of warfare." "We're not really following strategies," responded a human, identified as Dr. Lee, the creator of the sonic disruption technology. "We're just doing what humans do, adapting, improvising, and occasionally throwing a really good party in the face of impossible odds." The diplomatic exchange that followed shattered 3 millennia of Zeralian protocol. The humans negotiated not as a unified entity, but as a cacophony of voices, each offering different terms, making different demands, occasionally breaking into arguments among themselves, only to suddenly unite around particular points before dissolving back into cheerful discord. After 27 hours of the most irregular diplomatic proceedings in galactic history, the Chaos Accord was established. The Zeralian Empire would withdraw all military forces from Earth and its solar system. In exchange, humanity agreed to contain their unpredictable behavioral patterns within their own planetary system and to share their creativity through controlled cultural exchanges. As the Strategic Command Fleet prepared for departure, Admiral Vraxis stood once more on the observation deck, gazing down at the blue planet that had accomplished the impossible. "Establish the containment perimeter," he ordered. "Quarantine protocols at maximum enforcement level." Around Earth's orbital space, Zeralian vessels positioned themselves in precise formation, establishing a barrier not to keep humans in, but to warn others away. "Apply designation Omega-class biological hazard to all navigational beacons," Vraxis continued. "The following warning is to be broadcast continuously on all frequencies. This system contains an uncontained cognitive anomaly. Approach at risk of exposure to unpredictable behavioral contagion." Lieutenant Tyrrell, still processing the unprecedented events, looked at her commander. "Do you believe they pose a genuine threat to the wider galaxy, Admiral?" Vraxis considered the question carefully. "Not in the conventional sense. Their technology is primitive. Their military capacity is limited. But their minds—" He gestured toward the view screen where humans could be seen celebrating their victory with music, dance, and imaginative expressions of joy. "They transform chaos into strength. They weaponize creativity itself. If such cognitive patterns were to spread to other species—" He left the thought unfinished, but the implication was clear. In all the cosmos, the Zeralian Empire had conquered species with vastly superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and extraordinary physical capabilities. But they had never before encountered a species that embraced irrationality as a strength, that thrived on unpredictability, that met overwhelming force with improvisation and laughter. "Final report to High Command," Vraxis dictated. "Earth containment protocols established. Strategic withdrawal complete. Recommendation: no further conquest attempts. Justification: insufficient return on tactical investment. He paused, then added, personal addendum: never underestimate a species that weaponizes chaos. As the Omniscia departed Earth's solar system, Admiral Vraxis found himself experiencing something entirely new. An emotional response his species had engineered out of their genetic code, millennia ago humor. The corner of his mouth turned upward in what might, on a human face, have resembled a smile. Somewhere in the vastness of space, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy retreated from a species that had defended itself with disco balls and skateboards. And the universe would never be quite the same again. In the days following the Zeralian withdrawal, humanity gradually returned to its normal rhythms, though normal had acquired a distinctly new meaning. The hastily assembled global defense mechanisms were studied, documented, and in many cases transformed into celebratory monuments. The Cosmic Carnival became an annual worldwide festival commemorating not military victory, but creative resilience. Dr. Mara Lee received numerous accolades for her sonic amplification technology, though she insisted that her contribution had been minor compared to the planetary chorus of voices that had employed it. "I just built the microphone," she explained during an international broadcast. Humanity provided the scream. Night Detective Jackson, whose civilian astronomy equipment had been repurposed to track Zeralian ship movements, returned to his observatory with a newfound appreciation for the vastness of space and the peculiarity of life within it. "We always wondered if we were alone in the universe," he told his colleagues. "Turns out we're just the weird neighbors everyone tries to avoid." And across Earth, millions of ordinary individuals who had participated in humanity's disorganized but effective defense returned to their daily lives, changed in subtle but profound ways. They had faced an overwhelming force with improvisation, rather than surrender with creativity, rather than despair. The knowledge that humanity's greatest strength lay not in technological superiority, but in unpredictable innovation, became a cornerstone of a new, more confident global identity. In scientific communities, researchers analyzed recovered Zeralian technology, marveling at its precision and efficiency, while simultaneously recognizing its fundamental weakness and inability to adapt to the unexpected. Military strategists studied the successful defensive tactics, attempting to formalize what had been instinctive and spontaneous responses. Yet each time they established protocols based on past success, someone would inevitably point out that the very act of standardization contradicted the chaotic innovation that had proven so effective. "The moment we codify our unpredictability," Dr. Lee explained to a panel of defense officials, "we lose the very quality that protected us. Our strength isn't in having unconventional tactics. It's in constantly creating new ones that no one, including ourselves, could anticipate." This philosophy extended beyond defense considerations into every aspect of human endeavor. Art, science, technology, and governance all experienced revolutions of thought, embracing experimental approaches and celebrating rather than suppressing the human tendency toward creative disorder. If chaos could repel the most powerful empire in the galaxy, what other seemingly insurmountable challenges might it overcome? Aboard the Omniscia, now patrolling the outer reaches of a distant star system, Admiral Vraxis continued to reflect on the implications of the Earth encounter. The official records logged it as a strategic withdrawal based on resource allocation priorities, a face-saving designation that preserved the Zeralian Empire's undefeated status in technical terms. But Vraxis knew better. They had been defeated not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by a cognitive framework so foreign to Zeralian understanding that it might as well have been from another universe entirely. Admiral Lieutenant Tyrrell reported, interrupting his contemplation. "We've received a transmission from the quarantine perimeter around the human system." Vraxis raised an eyebrow, ridged his crystalline eyes, focusing on the tactical display. "The humans are attempting to breach containment." "No, sir," Tyrrell replied, her tone conveying confusion. They're broadcasting, entertainment, music, visual art, something they call reality television, and messages of friendship. The Admiral stared at the data stream in comprehension, giving way to a reluctant appreciation. Even in quarantine, facing a hostile force that had attempted planetary conquest, the humans responded not with conventional warfare or diplomatic formality, but with cultural expression. "They truly don't think like any species we've encountered," he murmured. "Record the transmissions for analysis, but maintain quarantine protocols. High Command would never understand." Tyrrell hesitated before speaking again. "Admiral, preliminary analysis indicates these transmissions contain no harmful content. They appear to be genuine attempts at cultural exchange." She paused. "Several crew members have expressed interest in the human music forms. There are requests to permit limited reception of these cultural broadcasts." Vraxis considered this unprecedented situation. Zeralian protocol strictly prohibited exposure to potentially contaminating ideological content. And yet the human cognitive patterns had demonstrated remarkable effectiveness. Perhaps there was something to be learned, under controlled conditions, of course. "Establish a secure cultural analysis laboratory," he decided. "Limited exposure for selected research personnel only. Extreme isolation protocols. I want to understand how they think." As the Omniscia continued its patrol route, a small contingent of Zeralian researchers began the careful study of human cultural transmissions. What they discovered both confused and fascinated them. Expressions of emotion that Zeralians had evolved beyond millennia ago. Conceptual frameworks that defied logical categorization, and most disturbing of all, narratives that celebrated the very unpredictability that Zeralian civilization had spent thousands of years engineering out of their species. The researchers found themselves experiencing unfamiliar cognitive responses. One analyst, after viewing human athletic competitions, began experimenting with introducing randomness into laboratory testing protocols, achieving unprecedented results. Another, exposed to human humor, developed new communication techniques that improved efficiency by 17% through the strategic deployment of what the analyst termed the unexpected convergence of disparate reference frames, essentially jokes. Admiral Vraxis observed these developments with growing concern. The influence of human cognitive patterns, even under controlled conditions, was resulting in behavioral changes that violated fundamental Zeralian principles of order and predictability. And yet the results were undeniably positive in terms of performance metrics. "This presents a significant philosophical quandary," he confided to Tyrrell during a private briefing. "Their chaos improves function. Their disorder enhances capability. Everything our civilization is built upon suggests this should be impossible." Tyrrell, who had been overseeing the cultural analysis project, nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps, Admiral, we have confused order with stagnation. The humans embrace chaos not for its own sake, but as a pathway to innovation." This insight struck Vraxis with unexpected force. Throughout 3 millennia of conquest, the Zeralian Empire had encountered thousands of species, each with their own technologies, biological adaptations, and social structures. They had cataloged, analyzed, and ultimately subjugated each one, using the same precise, ordered approach. Never once had they considered that their greatest strength, perfect predictability, might also be their most profound weakness. "Expand the cultural analysis program," he ordered, making a decision that contradicted 3,000 years of imperial doctrine. "Controlled exposure for all command staff. We must understand this perspective." As the Zeralian command structure cautiously explored human cognitive frameworks, subtle changes began to permeate their operations. Battle formations incorporated elements of unpredictability. Scientific research protocols allowed for intuitive leaps outside established parameters. Even the hierarchical communication structure became more flexible, permitting lower-ranked individuals to contribute unconventional insights. 6 months after the Earth encounter, the Omniscia encountered a spatial anomaly that conventional Zeralian protocols classified as navigational hazard to be avoided at all costs. But Admiral Vraxis, influenced by his study of human problem-solving approaches, made an unprecedented decision. "Adjust course toward the anomaly," he ordered. "Precautionary measures at maximum, but sensors at full capacity. We will study this phenomenon directly." The bridge crew exchanged glances, a distinctly un-Zeralian behavior that had become increasingly common among those exposed to human cultural influences. Direct investigation of unknown phenomena outside established parameters was not merely unconventional, it was revolutionary. As the Omniscia approached the spatial distortion, their sensors recorded data that contradicted all existing theoretical frameworks. The anomaly appeared to be a natural wormhole formation, something Zeralian science had deemed impossible, despite millennia of attempting to create such structures artificially. "Remarkable," Vraxis murmured, studying the readings. "Our pursuit of perfect order led us to dismiss the possibility of natural phenomena that don't conform to our expectations. How many other discoveries have we missed due to our insistence on predictability?" The exploration of the wormhole phenomenon yielded technological insights that would transform Zeralian capabilities, potentially advancing their scientific understanding by centuries. All because one Zeralian commander had been influenced by the chaotic thought patterns of a quarantined species. When the Omniscia eventually returned to the Zeralian homeworld, Admiral Vraxis faced the High Command with a report that challenged the foundational principles of their civilization. He presented not merely the technical data from the wormhole discovery, but a philosophical reassessment of the Empire's approach to conquest, exploration, and knowledge itself. For 3,000 years, he explained to the assembled Zeralian leadership, "We have expanded across the galaxy, operating on the principle that perfect order is the optimal state of existence. We have subjugated species not merely to expand our territory, but to impose our conception of order upon the cosmos." The High Command representatives listened with growing concern as Vraxis continued. "Our encounter with humanity has demonstrated a fundamental flaw in this approach. Their embrace of unpredictability, what we would classify as chaos, provides adaptive advantages our ordered systems cannot match. They innovate, not despite disorder, but because of it. They transform limitations into strengths through creative thinking unbound by procedural constraints." A member of the High Command rose to interrupt. "You suggest we abandon the very foundations of our civilization based on a single encounter with a primitive species." "I suggest," Vraxis replied carefully, "that we expand our understanding. Perfect order and complete chaos represent two extremes. The humans have found strength in the balance between them: structured unpredictability, organized innovation. Our refusal to explore this cognitive territory has become a self-imposed limitation." The debate that followed lasted for weeks, dividing the Zeralian leadership into factions. The traditionalists advocated for stricter quarantine protocols, fearing the contamination of chaos. The progressives, led by Admiral Vraxis, argued for controlled cultural exchange and the incorporation of human-inspired creativity into Zeralian systems. Eventually, a compromise was reached. The Earth quarantine would remain in place, preventing unrestricted contact between humans and the wider galactic community. However, a specialized division of the Zeralian Scientific Authority would continue to study human innovation patterns, adapting and implementing them within carefully managed parameters. The decision represented the most significant shift in Zeralian policy in 3 millennia. A civilization defined by perfect predictability had for the first time embraced the potential value of the unexpected. As for humanity, they remained blissfully unaware of the profound impact their chaotic defense had wrought upon the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Earth continued its tumultuous development, its inhabitants creating, arguing, laughing, and innovating with the same disorganized brilliance that had confounded the Zeralian invasion. Occasionally, humans reported strange lights in the night sky, the quarantine perimeter ships maintaining their vigilant watch. Most dismissed these sightings as satellites or atmospheric phenomena. A few suspected the truth, that beyond Earth's atmosphere, an advanced civilization stood guard, not to contain a threat, but to study a cognitive revolution they could barely comprehend. In a university laboratory in Boston, Dr. Mara Lee occasionally gazed up at the stars, wondering about the beings that had retreated from humanity's chaotic defense. Her sonic amplification technology had since been adapted for medical applications, using precisely tuned frequencies to target disease organisms while leaving healthy tissue unaffected. Innovation born from improvisation. "I wonder if they're still watching," she said to a colleague one evening as they calibrated the device for a new treatment protocol. "And if they are, what they think of us now." Her colleague laughed. "If they're smart, they're taking notes. The universe seems pretty orderly on the cosmic scale. Stars, planets, galaxies, all following predictable patterns. Maybe what it really needs is a little human chaos to shake things up." Dr. Lee smiled, adjusting a frequency modulator with intuitive precision, rather than following the calibration protocols. Chaos theory suggests that complex systems require both order and disorder to evolve. Perhaps we're just the universe's way of introducing some necessary randomness into the equation. Far above Earth's atmosphere, aboard a Zaralian monitoring vessel, a young analyst observed this conversation through long-range surveillance technology. The analyst had been born after the Earth encounter raised in the emerging philosophical framework that cautiously incorporated human-inspired innovation patterns into traditional Zaralian structures. "They speak truth without realizing it," the analyst noted in the official observation log. "The balance between order and chaos appears to be not merely a cognitive approach, but a universal principle. Perhaps the humans are not an anomaly to be contained, but a necessary counterbalance to our own extreme order." This insight would eventually form the cornerstone of a new Zaralian understanding of the cosmos, a perspective that acknowledged the value of unpredictability within structured systems, of creative disorder within established frameworks. A perspective that might never have emerged without the influence of a species that had defended itself against the most powerful military force in the galaxy using beach parties and skateboard battalions. And so the legacy of humanity's chaotic resistance extended far beyond Earth, inspiring a methodical, orderly civilization to embrace the possibility that sometimes the most effective solution is the one no one could possibly predict. Admiral Vraxis, in the final report of his distinguished career, summarized the lesson that would transform Zaralian civilization. "We conquered 1,000 worlds through perfect order, only to be defeated by magnificent chaos. In that defeat, we discovered a greater victory, the understanding that true advancement lies not in the elimination of unpredictability, but in learning to dance with it." As humanity continued its tumultuous evolution, blissfully unaware of its profound impact on galactic philosophy, the stars above twinkled with the lights of Zaralian observation vessels. Not conquerors anymore, but students of chaos, learning from the species that had taught the most powerful empire in the cosmos to embrace the unexpected. A species that, when faced with the most advanced military force in galactic history, had responded not with fear, but with creativity, laughter, and the occasional beach party in the middle of a desert battlefield. A species like no other in the universe.